So we've had the welcomes now. Before we move on to our opening panel, we do want to get a little bit deeper in terms of what BCOMS has found out in its most recent research. So can you please welcome the BCOMS founder, Mann.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Fantastic to see such a brilliant turnout. We've got people stood around the outside, so I don't know if you want to come and sit down and find some spaces, or if you're happy standing up, that's all good as well. So it's a pleasure to be back delivering the D Word 4. The D Word 3 was in 2018. We've had a pandemic since then. So we've had a big delay in terms of the research that we've been doing as a network, but I'm proud to say that we have some findings to share with you all today that hopefully will be thought-provoking and kind of set the day up in terms of why are we here? Why are we here and what are we trying to achieve and do together? So hopefully the presentation works. Yep, that's the opening slide. I've got lots of information, by the way, so if I start speaking really quickly to make time, that is the reason. So apologies to whoever is kindly writing this all up as well. So the industry, when they come together and see this, it normally brings a few gasps because we're sharing some difficult information at times. Not always, but some difficult information. So please do take pictures of it, share it on your social media, agree, disagree. Some people, you've forgot that person. That person went to that event. Please do call it out, but we are very happy broadly that this is a snapshot of the industry as it is right now. Obviously, diversity means many things, and what we have managed to capture basically is the diversity around what is visible. And this is not an academic research. So for any academics in the room, I'm just saying that because academics get really, really angry when you try and represent something as academic when it's not. So this is not academic. This is a head count essentially by Lisa. Maybe a round of applause for Lisa. She's done a lot of heavy lifting on this. And myself. I don't need a round of applause, it's fine. But we are looking at what visible diversity we can see. So that is why we have focused on race in terms of black, Asian, and also gender in terms of female. That's why we have focused on that. We are not creating a hierarchy of what is important, but we are looking at what we can do with the resources that we have. We would like to change this going forward in terms of having a deeper dive. And I'm really happy that John Holmes from Sports Media LGBT is here today and has some specific research around the LGBT experience in the sports media as well, which we'll hear later on in the day. Right, so let's crack on with this. So the process, we looked at a number of different events, a number of different broadcasting roles across the industry and roles across the Euros and some other headline figures across the written media. And I'll come and break that down a little bit later within this presentation. But what is data without context? And context is often missing in these debates and discussions around diversity, and it really winds me up. Because if you don't understand the context, you don't understand the urgency. So what we're looking at here is a UK population context. So my eyes are not so good at the moment, but 13% of the UK population is black, Asian, mixed, or other ethnic group in the census 2011. Those words are not chosen by me. That is what the census said. We have a new census coming up very shortly. It'll be interesting to see what that says. Those figures, I'm sure, will go that way and not that way. 40.2% of London identified as black, Asian, mixed, or other ethnic group. So 40.2%, and that's in 2011. Look out there, people. You know, that is going to look very different in the next census, I can guarantee you of that. So we have a significant number of people from minority backgrounds in London. And why is that important? I'm sharing that because where are we largely based as an industry? We are largely based in London. Not everyone, I can see people from the BBC, what about us? No, I know that you're up in Salford, but largely our industry is based in London. And a little reminder for anyone who forgets, and lots of people tend to forget, men are actually the minority. We are not the majority. 51% of the UK population are women. Okay, the sporting context. Now this is where, for me, it gets really, really interesting. And this is where I challenge you across the day to be thinking about the UK context and the sporting context and where we are as an industry and where we want to be. So 42% of England men's Euro 2020 squad identified as black or mixed race. 43% of the Premier League, the biggest league in the world. Sorry, Alistair, I know you're here, so I thought I'd give you a shout out there. 43% of the Premier League are black, according to research by the Black Footballers Partnership. 43%. 42% of the GB Olympics athletics team for the Tokyo Games were black or mixed race. 51% of the same athletics team were women, and a significant proportion of that were black women. 45% of the GB Olympics boxing team for the Tokyo Games were black, Asian, or mixed race. Think about that context. This is a massive contribution from these communities. So what does the sports media look like? Let's have a bit of a dive into that. So basically, what we did is we looked at 258 roles, and sorry, I see many people leaning in because the font is way too small, apologies. 258 roles across major broadcasters covering the men's Euros, the Olympics, the Paralympics, the Winter Olympics, Winter Paralympics, and Wimbledon. I think I've got everything there. Sorry, my eyes are really struggling with this. We also looked at 78 written roles covering the UEFA Men's Euros and have had a more general look at the senior roles across the written side of the sports media. So now let me tell you a little bit more about that. In terms of black representation, and black in terms of the African Caribbean background, 41 of the 248 roles was covered by people of black or mixed heritage from those communities. That's 15%. So actually, this could be welcomed, and maybe should be welcomed, as positive news. Because for those who don't know, 3.3%, I think the census said, is basically what black communities represent of the UK. Including those who are of mixed heritage, that goes to about 5.5%. So 15% as a figure compared to the UK population context doesn't look so bad. However, are we comparing this with the UK context in terms of our population, or are we comparing it with the sporting context? Remember those figures, 42%, 45%, etc., etc. In terms of Asian representation, 14 of the 258 roles were covered by people who identify as Asian. That's 5.4%. The Asian population in this country is the largest ethnic minority population. We don't often say that out loud at conferences, etc. It's something which I'm sort of, oh yeah, of course it is, yes, of course. But it's the largest ethnic minority population, and yet we're just below that. I also have to add here that what we'll do in our guide at the end of this is we will break down Asian representation by East Asian and South Asian. I think that's an important distinction for us to make, particularly as BCOMS. So, looking at the 55 roles across Asian and black participants in broadcasting that we've identified as part of our research, we had a bit of a dive into saying, well, who are these people and what are their roles? So many were, as you would expect, pundits. Of course, we have incredible presenters like Jermaine Genus, like Alex Scott. But we found 38 of the 55, which I think is really interesting, came from a professional sporting background. So they had competed in the Premier League, they had competed at the Olympics, etc., etc. Now that for me is actually good news. It's good news because it shows a pathway is working from those who are on the field of play and excelling into those positions. And that is really important. I've done a lot of work around athletes' transitions. Trust me, it's very, very difficult for many of those people. However, what we also can't do is take our eye off the ball in terms of the people who don't have those sporting backgrounds. We need to make sure that they are absolutely on our radar in terms of our thinking of who are the people that fill the broadcast roles that we have going forward. Now we move to women in broadcasting. 51% of the population, the majority of the population, all right, but you know, the majority. 91 of the 258 roles in broadcasting that we looked at were filled by women. And really interestingly for me, 29 of the 258 were filled by black, Asian, minority ethnic women. So at the last D-Word in 2018, it was a real big point that we raised to say, when we were looking at the progress of women, actually what we were talking about really was white women. We weren't really talking about black and Asian women, women from minority ethnic backgrounds. However, we have seen a bit of a shift since 2018 in this area. That's not to say we've cracked it. I don't think we should be popping champagne or anything just yet. We've got a lot of work to do in this area. But what I want to do is share the challenges in this presentation, but also the progress that we have made as well. Right, the written media. Okay, written people, might be moving around your seats a little bit here, feeling a little bit uncomfortable. We have progress to make here. It's no secret. Everybody knows that in the written side of the sports media, we have massive, massive challenges. It's not to say broadcast doesn't. So from our looking at the Euros in 2020, which of course took place last year, from the 78 roles that we assessed across the 8 national mainstream newspapers, we found 3 women writers. We found 2 black writers, 6 Asian writers, and 1 woman of colour. So let that sink in for a while. 78. And this is what we have at our major football tournament for men. There's a major one for women tomorrow starting as well. But for men, this is what it looked like in terms of our written media. So massive challenges there. Everyone knows that in the room. But when you see it up here, it's important to take that in. Why are we here today? What are we trying to do? And a general look across the written sports media didn't bring us any more good news, to be completely frank with you. No women, black, Asian, or minority ethnic people employed as head of sport. No women, black, Asian, minority ethnic people employed as the chief sports writer. But 1 person employed as the chief football writer of Asian heritage. It's not all bad news. Sorry, people are taking pictures. Do you want me to go back to that? It's not all bad news. It is not all bad news. I don't want to be the Grim Reaper. I think when I've done these presentations in the past, it's come across that way. But we need to hear uncomfortable stuff if we're genuinely going to move forward here. But it's not all bad news. The SJA Awards, the major awards in the sports journalism industry. Jonathan Liu from The Guardian, SJA Sports Writer of the Year. Laura Woods, works in the office just down the road there at Talk Sport, Broadcaster of the Year. Vicky Sparks, SJA Commentator of the Year. The Telegraph have launched a women's sports department, and it's already winning many, many awards. Carrie Brown is now the chair of the Football Writers Association. Darren Lewis, good to see Darren here, assistant editor of the Daily Mirror. The Athletic has launched a number of sports writers bringing diversity to the industry, have found a home. The FT, and I didn't know this for a while, had an Asian sports editor for a while. He's now not in that position. Sky Sports and BT, sorry, I'll get in trouble there. Sky Sports and BBC Sport, investing in the WSL, and therefore lots of jobs coming up around diverse representation across those teams. And Talk Sport, he's already given it a plug today. Huge show on a Thursday evening, Hugh and Darren, a black-led editorial team, I think it's important to say, not just a presentational team. That is progress. And after 14 years, BCOMS is no longer a network solely driven by volunteers. We now have 2 staff. They've done all of this, not me, in terms of bringing this all together. And we have a team of consultants delivering our work. BCOMS now has formal partnerships with ITV Sport, BT Sport, BBC Sport, Nike, Meta, and News UK. We're also working with other partners such as F1, other partners such as Chelsea Football Club, such as the Premier League. We're beginning to do the work in collaboration and partnership. And we're beginning to feel like we're making a difference in a way that we weren't before based on resource. So collaboration for us is absolutely the way forward. Thank you very much for your time. I know there will be questions on the presentation. Why wasn't I in there? Are you sure you got the stats right, etc., etc. Please come and find me. I love a debate and discussion, but I hope you feel this is an accurate snapshot of the industry. I hope that fuels your fire for the day in terms of the work that we do together in our workshops. And thank you for your time and being here today. Thank you.